So I went to LACMA on Saturday, and the second I got out of the elevator, I saw this massive chicken head, and I was like, I am in the correct place. Hey, hey, party people. Today is the very first episode of Watch Me Design a Fashion Collection Season 3, in which I explore my creativity beyond the realms of designing for teaching purposes, where I don't care if it illustrates a concept well or anything. It's going to be strictly about what I feel like doing. I am going to take my own advice and design off of the way I teach how to design. Except, as you know, I haven't figured out who my customer is, what my brand is. This is really about exploring creativity. So I'm going to skip the chapter I have on kind of establishing my brand values and the type of business I want to create and what price point I'm going, like all of this is in here. I'm going to skip this for now because this is really about my creativity. And so I'm going to start with chapter 3, which is collection direction, picking a season. And I have design briefs here of different ways to approach a collection, which again, I'm going to skip for now because I just want to like go through my inspiration images and kind of see where it takes me, and then use one of my design briefs to kind of mold and use my inspiration in a specific direction, okay? And so right now, I'm at sketchbook development, and I do have a whole section in chapter 3 on sketchbook development and how I gathered images and how I play around with images. And haha, look at this. So this is in my book. This is actually the sketchbook I used. See, I wrote my motto, perfectionism is stupid, done is better than perfect, practice not magic. I did these sketchbook development pages right here. During my live stream, I shared some of the books that I want to go over to like be inspired and look at images and try to like narrow down the direction of this collection. So one of the books is this military jacket book. This is not going to be a video in which you just watch me flip through a bunch of books. This one I'm kind of holding on to for later because this one I just really love all the pocket exploration, to be honest. And so that's gonna come later. I'm not thinking about pockets right now. I know my stuff's gonna have pockets. Whatever I'm designing, it's gonna have pockets. But playing around with different pockets and stuff, which is the #1 reason I love this book, it'll come later, okay? So I'm just putting this aside for now. This is kind of where I started because I have been actually thinking about this for months. This is about Korean patchwork quilting, 37 보자기 style projects, okay? So 보자기 is, I'll show you like kind of a traditional 보자기 they have in here, where they use scraps of silks. Koreans use scraps of silks that were used when making hanbok, Korean traditional costume, and use the small pieces to piece them to create like all kinds of things, but mostly these bigger fabrics in which to wrap things, to cover food with, that sort of thing. And because for sustainability reasons, I've always been looking for ways to use scrap. This has been on my mind for a long time. And I had this idea because I have been obsessed with textural ombre and how to create textural ombre for a long time. And even like when I think about how I love clusters of things and like sewing pom-poms and stuff, I also love the idea of clusters and then it fading gradually, you know, not abruptly. I love gradients, ombre, fading gracefully, love all that stuff. And so I've always wanted to do it in a texture sense. And I thought, what if I did it with 조각보? 조각 means piece. in Korean, 조각, okay? And so I actually bookmarked this so that I can try it myself with some fabrics. This is the one I'm most interested in trying. This one and this one. And this one is to make a tapestry, like piece them together in these strips. And I was just thinking, what if I had a piece of fabric, okay? And I had these strips, and I had whatever, you know, they're all coming down, and just the remnants and the pieces that I have. But I started here with like 16-ounce denim, okay? And then 14-ounce, and then 12, 8, and then I got a chambray, and then I got like a gauze, like ended all the way at the bottom with something really light, really thin. Maybe gauze is too flimsy. I still want to kind of keep a crispness, okay? So, but something that's like really sheer, maybe an organdy, which is organza in a cotton, so it's matte and a little bit drier looking than organza. So I could create a textural ombre. And then this is, you know, the fabric that I would use to cut whatever outfit, whatever garment I wanted to make. And the stiffest denim, the 16-ounce denim, which is like a winter weight denim, would be up here where I could create like a proper shoulder, armhole, collar, those kinds of more tailored fitting things. And then this bottom here is like softer around the hem where things can be a little bit looser and doesn't require structure. So this has just, the elements of this has been just like chewing in my brain. You know, you can do this with any sort of category of fabric, you know, just the stiffer, heavier version at the top, like built for outerwear, to the sheerest version. So I could start with the Duchess satin up here and end with an organza or chiffon down here. Maybe a mousseline, whatever. This is Haute Couture Ateliers, and this is not a book showing a bunch of collections. Like, there's a beginning section here where they kind of go over the work of some couturiers, but mostly this book is about extreme close-ups and some process shots of haute couture finishes, surface embellishments. There's a section back here that goes into like fans and accessories and stuff, which was less interesting to me. This one, the note I left, laser cut denim, laser cut shearling. I love the idea that it's not just always this very like, I don't know, I love the texture of this and the depths. You know, we have flat, thin fur, fluffy fur. It's like very three-dimensional. This is by Yi Qingyin, who I'd never heard of until I had picked up this book initially. These are all from my stash. I've had all these books for a while. I love this idea of stitching embellishments onto a net and layering it onto opaque. And if that sounds familiar, that is actually a design exercise I have in my book where I talk about how you can layer. It doesn't all have to be like a solid fabric, but I love playing with texture. So if you had something that's an opaque bottom, and then you put a net, a mesh, a lace, something on top, and then you added something on top of that, some sort of embellishment. So it can be feathers, it can be beads, it can be ribbon. Like, how often do you see ribbon used like this? So just a note to remain playful, play with textures, and remind myself of that. So yeah, I already bookmarked all the things I want to show you because, again, I'm not trying to make this a book flipping video, but just kind of show my process. So these are French knots. So this book, Fashion Embroidery, Embroidery Techniques and Inspiration for Haute Couture Clothing. And this one shows a bunch of haute couture techniques for embellishments. And this is a little tutorial on French knots. And what if I did French knots, but they were giant and they were done in weird materials? Okay, again, this really plays to my need to cluster things. Don't try to psychoanalyze me. I don't even know what that's about. Okay, but I love me a cluster. What if I did a cluster of French knots or like a fade like this of really big French knots? And I don't mean fist size. You don't want like a bunch of fist size things on your clothes. That's a little much, even for me. But you know, I mean, look at the scale of this person's fingertip, right? Something that was more like that, where you could really see the material, like a thick twine, leather strapping, a beautiful ribbon, like a really fat, beautiful yarn, but do French knots on the surface. I like that idea a lot. And then I was looking at these, and these are so beautiful. I was like, do I need to learn how to make flowers? Did y'all see my video on American couturier Anne Lowe? I did a deep dive bio on her work, and she was the queen of making fabric flowers. Maybe I need to learn how to make fabric flowers. I don't know. This is color charts. I posted this book on Instagram, and one of my girlfriends from high school, she was like, I need to get my color charts done. And I'm like, this is not that kind of book, girl. Also, those color charts are a scam, okay? The whole, oh, I'm a spring, so I can never wear my favorite color anymore. Shut up. Moving on. So this is a really great book, and I am a color geek, but I love these historical, and they're separated by time. This one is mid to late 19th century. It gets older than that, and then more recent, but it just shows the way colors have been charted and labeled and named over the years. Like the term vermilion, which is like a deep, warm red, it's a term that's been around for 100 years, like billions of years. Viridian, there are all these like old color words that still exist they're very historical and old. Anyway, so I'm looking at these color charts, and so I've just been tagging some of the colors that I think really call to me and feel like the direction I want to go to. So I started here with these warm neutrals, okay? And I love how they did have a couple of indigos. And I know, okay, for those of you following along at home, have you picked a side, denim or outerwear, which one you think I'm going to do? Or are you team 3, like some other unknown? Because that is a thing that could happen. That is definitely a thing that could happen. You have to remember, I just like denim, period. I wear a lot of denim. Jackets, skirts, jeans, like I have a chambray button, a snap down shirt, whatever. And I also like navy. So don't think that's a hint. But I like these warm neutrals with this navy. I was also liking these warmer grays, okay? Well, it kind of depends on what system you're following. Like when you look at different marker brands, if you look at warm gray, some brands call these sorts of like purple undertone grays warm gray. Some people, their warm gray has like a greenish undertone. Some brands, when you have that greenish undertone, they call that French gray. But these have like a beautiful purplish, warmish undertone to the grays that I like, which is really not here, but I'm really feeling grays right now, but like with like a very beautiful, colorful undertone. I don't like this pink. I don't really like this yellow either, but I love this. So I'm a big fan of complementary color schemes. And this is yellow and purple, and these are kind of mutes where you add a touch of the purple to the yellow to get like a duller, slightly darker yellow. And then you add some yellow to the purple and you get a softened, duller purple. They call this ecru. Nobody these days would call this ecru, unless has been aged over time. But most people, when they think of ecru, they think something closer to off-white. But I was like, as I was flipping through this book, I was kind of like, oh, maybe I want to do a yellow and purple story, but muted. Because I was, thinking of these purplish grays, right? Maybe something in here too, like this. See that? And then also, I don't know why this one is randomly green, but look at this whole page. I feel like this is a beautiful color story. You've got your yellows and golds and muted purples. There are no super bright purples. They're all fairly muted or shaded. And as you know, tint is color plus white, shade is color plus black, tone is color plus gray, mute is color plus complement. So you've got all these beautiful tints and shades and tones and mutes in here. And you even get into some indigo territory. Like, I love what is happening in this color story. So this might be it. Like, I have color exercises in the book. I'm going to be doing color exercises to like narrow it down because obviously this is too many colors. But I'm loving this. I'm feeling this. This is Masters of New Jewelry Design. I saw this and I immediately thought textured lining. I'm so clocked in on fashion stuff. I see something like this and it was immediately textured lining. I love this idea of the tiles falling apart and they're held together with these like very thin wire twine strings. I would love to see the reverse of this and see how they're actually connected together. But it reminds me of this idea of clustering and falling apart and the gaps spreading, widening. So I'm going to be playing with this concept in this project. And then again, this like embellishment over sheer, over opaque, the layering of textures, which I absolutely love, which absolutely could apply to denim, to evening wear, really just depending on the specific materials used. And then this one, I like the idea of objects hanging on strings and chains instead of like classic beading that's just attached to the body or attached to the garment. And what those objects are, I don't know. One time I bought a whole bag of little emojis, like they're little, I don't know, they're like stuffed animals, but they're like small emoji faces with the idea of just attaching them all to a jacket. I'm gonna try to find them so I could take a picture for the video. So I saw this exhibit on basically calligraphy and calligraphy inspired art. And the exhibition was, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, but there were some really cool pieces. There was one painting in particular that I am obsessed with, that I want in my house, and I do not say that often at all. I love the ones that have like a very vivid brush stroke, that feel very active and loose. It's more difficult to have a loose, expressive line that expresses the concept well, as opposed to something really tight and rigid that does the concept, because at a certain point you have to let go of the brush. You have to let bristles follow physics, and you have to control as much as you can, but there's a certain amount where the bristles are gonna do their thing. And the people who can do that, I'm like, mwah, chef's kiss. But I love this kind of stuff where it feels very fluid, but controlled at the same time. This is that same feeling, but in a very different kind of brushstroke, where the splatter, it's very angry and expressive, and you feel like the brush is being slammed down onto the paper, and the splatter, again, you can't control splatter, but you can direct it. And that requires a lot of practice. And I really enjoyed that. And you can see the layers of black. Like, it's not just like, you can tell where the brushes kind of made their physical squiggles pressing into the paper, because you can see the different opacities of black. I've thought about this a lot, and I've thought about what this red is doing, because I feel like it's doing a lot. I've studied fashion for a long time, and I've studied art as well, but I'm not as well versed in critical analysis of fine art as I am of fashion. But I want to talk about this red dot smear with somebody. I mean, ideally, my old art history professor, Parmi Gentini. I learned so much from that woman, but she's retired and living on the East Coast now. We're still Facebook pals, but this already is this beautiful brushwork, but this red, I love this idea of it looking random, but still so purposeful that if it's not here, it is really a different work. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. This is called Zen painting, and it has no blurb. There are some that have like these whole paragraphs on process, and then there's like my favorite ones tend to have just like ink on paper, ink and acrylic on paper, just like nothing. Like, thanks. This one was really cool because at first, from far away, it just looks like texture. And then you get really close and you see that it is a lot of teeny tiny writing. And the script, listen, I can't read it, so I can't tell you how legible or beautiful it is, but it looks, just looking at it, not reading it, it looks beautiful. And then it's got these lines, the background texture, the way it's written, the blotches, and then the smears, like everything kind of works together to both create a text and a texture. Very interesting. Like, you get all up close, and I'm sure somebody could read it. This one was incredible to me. This is called Snow Falling Over the Sea. And when you look at it and you learn the title, doesn't it look like snow falling onto the sea? It just looks like snowfall. And it just looks like a lot of random brush strokes of just snow falling. However, it's actually a poem. Like, the translation is right there. And these are actual words that can be read as a poem. And I just love that, how it is the text, but it is the art. Incredible. This one, I have no idea what's going on, but I love the layering going on. Are you sensing a theme? Clusters and layers, layers and clusters. Okay. This is the painting I'm now obsessed with and is really like all the other ones, they're really interesting to look at, and I may visit them again because they're really beautiful and conceptually they're very interesting. But this is the one I had such a visceral reaction to. This is called Elephant. Can you see the elephant? Just like the energy, the size, just, I wish it was even bigger. It's a fairly large painting. Here's my girlfriend Susie in front of the painting just for scale. But I wish it was really big so that, you could really feel the energy of the elephant and the textures and the liveliness of the stroke even more. But just even at its size, it was so incredible. I like something when I take a lot of photos of it. So here's a close-up. And here's another close-up. Look at all these textures that are happening in here. This is just ink and acrylic on paper. This is a living artist. I've already looked them up. So I start taking these close-ups of different patches, and you just see absolute galaxies in them. And just the layering, where you see some where he's just lost control and left it like that. And there's some where I feel like he used like acrylic to, in essence, like white out so that he could cover and kind of carve out the shapes he wanted. So it's like a real contradiction in the splatter versus the cleanup. Again, like there are these spots where he covers, but it could not cover all the way. So you end up with these gray bits, which adds another element to it. Maybe that was also on purpose. But again, this had no blurb. It just had a blank on paper. And again, even the black has layers. There's like a shiny, more opaque lacquer on top of a matte, duller black. So I was like looking at all these others, enjoying myself, enjoying this other art. And then I went back. Here's another section of the painting and started taking more pictures of it because I wanted to make sure I just like had cataloged all the sections. This might be where I started developing the color story because you're seeing all these yellows, you're seeing all these blacks, you're seeing all these navies and the grays. Oh, I guess this painting was infiltrating my subconscious. Although I don't like this green. I'm not feeling the green for my collection. Although, let me tell you, anytime you're inspired by something, you do not have to take it literally. In fact, you should not take it literally. It should be a starting point for you to start getting more ideas. That's what inspiration is. It's like it inspires you to head a certain path, and it is not a source code for imitation. So, but like all these yellows, these muted yellows in here. So that's where I am. I'm looking at all these images. I'm getting inspired. I'm going to start putting together more of this. Like I'm just really liking this one. It was just like a random. I had this idea of cording across leather. Usually cording and piping is done along a seam to emphasize the seam, to add a textural element to the seam. But I wanted just to have the cording and to stitch it into the leather to create a texture of my own with my own random pattern. And it could be a little bit more organized into garments like this, but I like the idea of this. Just like a big old skin with random cording across it. I was thinking more about aprons here. I like this idea of folding and rolling the leather onto a flat fabric in the back so it holds the roll shape, and then putting clusters of objects beaded onto the surface. These are the collaging pages I did for that Patreon project that I was telling you guys about that I cannot find the sketches for. Look, I found the project though. I put it in my book. I'll be doing that on this channel where I narrow down some of the images that I like and I start playing around using the images as further exploration and inspiration of concepts. So stay tuned for that. But this is kind of where my headspace is at in terms of design inspiration. Drop me your comments and questions below. But every Friday, watch me design a fashion collection, season 3. See y'all next Friday.